This is the Norris Group's Real Estate Investor Radio Show, the award-winning show dedicated to thought leaders shaping the real estate industry and local experts revealing their insider tips to succeed in an ever-changing real estate market. Hosted by author, investor, and hard money lender, Bruce Norris.
Hey everybody, it's Aaron Norris with the Norris Group. Today we have back Senator Bob Wieckowski, who was back on in November. He's been a representative since 2014 for the 10th Senate District in California, which stretches from Southern Alameda County into Santa Clara County. Mr. Wieckowski chairs the Environmental Quality Committee and Budget Subcommittee 2 on Resources, Environmental Protection, Energy, and Transportation. And he also is a member of the Senate Committees on Judiciary, Budget and Fiscal Review, Transportation and Housing, and Ethics. And he's been one of the leaders in the accessory dwelling unit space, and really excited to have him on to talk about everything that's going on with ADUs. So thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me back on, Aaron.
Well, I'm going to be moderating a panel in San Diego on June 11th, and the audience there is really going to be owner-occupants. San Diego Creative Investors Association decided to do sort of some community outreach, and we might have a large number of first-time landlords on our hands if they decide to move forward with the ADUs. But our radio show is really focused on the investor voice, and there are some exciting things happening. There are 9 bills right now on accessory dwelling units in the Senate and in the Assembly. So apparently there's a lot of interest. So you've been on the forefront. What's changed?
Well, I think some of my colleagues have recognized the important role that ADUs will play in helping the state build more affordable housing. You know, I've often said on panels in testimony that, you know, the ADUs is not a panacea for solving our housing crisis, but it's a quick, efficient, and less expensive. I wouldn't say inexpensive, less expensive way to build structures and build housing without public subsidies. The end.
Well, and you're from the Bay Area, so you definitely have some issues up there. I had a friend that just moved up there from Southern California, and he lives outside public transit 2 hours from where he works in downtown San Francisco. So I'm sure you get that feedback quite a bit.
Yeah, many moons ago, I was living in San Francisco, and my bankruptcy firm gave me a reassignment to San Jose. So I had a reverse commute. So I had 2 buses, the train, and then the trolley up to the office, and it was 2.5 hours. And it was 5 hours back and forth. Read a lot of books. That was a good thing. Did some work on it, but boy, I was tuckered when I got home. That's for sure.
That's a hard life. That's not easy. And down here in Southern California, the prices have gotten a little nuts. But let's go back just in case we don't want to lose anybody. Where did the conversation from accessory dwelling units starts, like the year? Because the first bill went into effect in 2017, I believe. So can you want to catch us up on the journey you've had with this?
Yeah, I mean, I come from local government. I was on the Fremont Recreation Commission, the Planning Commission, and then the City Council for 6 years. And in 2002, Rod Wright, then Assemblymember Rod Wright, passed the bill that required all cities to come up with a granny unit, second unit ordinance. And the idea was pretty much the same song we're hearing now, is we wanted cities to encourage more granny units and secondary units. And we said, we'll give you, free reign, but develop these ordinances. And what a nightmare that came down to be. They cleverly, using their city planners, city managers, city attorneys, whatever, basically created ordinances that made it impossible for anybody to build a second unit. So when I was on the city council a few years later, and we're doing our housing element, our general plan update, and I was asking, well, how many secondary units have we built? And it was, Fremont's got a population of 230,000, and they were building 1, 2 maybe, and it was all rich doctors, up in the hills that didn't want their mother-in-law living in this. They didn't care what the cost was. They said, we're going to get her. She's going to be over there. She's not going to be under my roof. So it was, it was just ridiculous. And it was pretty much statewide. And so I had this, I have my bill packages sometimes gets filled. So I was, even as an assembly member, this was one of these issues that I would sit down with my staff and talk about in the the winter, what we wanted to do with our package. And it was, at least as far as the assembly was concerned, I could have done this earlier, but I had other priorities. So it got done, and finally I got to the Senate and said, we're doing it this year, and I'm going for the full Monty. So 1069 was the process of that, and just the frustration that cities had manipulated the intentions of the legislature, and also the intentions of the homeowners. I mean, the people, stifling them from developing their houses the way that they wanted to. And I think that's sort of the genesis of it.
Well, and is it unusual for the state to come in and basically dictate to municipalities? Because basically in 2017, you said, if you have an ordinance in place, that's nice and cute and all, but this is the new thing that goes into effect. You have to have a new one on file that allows for accessory dwelling units to be built. It's by right as a landowner. Is that unusual?
Well, I think, I guess maybe that we could say it's unusual. I think the key with accessory dwelling units is we just weren't bullying states, cities and counties, and saying you do this and you do that. We were saying we want to return the authority back to the homeowner. Mm-hmm. And under these certain conditions, this is the homeowner the homeowner has a ministerial right to have their plans approved. There's a lot of people are tone deaf about, ministerial normally means you're standing at the counter, you're paying your fee, and they're approving your plans. It's a 10-minute gig, not a 60-day, 120-day, or a 6-year odyssey that one goes through with some cities. So the difference was that we're giving the homeowner that authority to develop their lot, and we set some guidelines. I mean, 1069 for all the benefits, it still limits this right to a half a mile from transit, and it wasn't just large transit or, active transit, it was any transit. So if you got one bus stop in your little town, when you're within a half mile, you're protected, or you come under the 1069.
Okay.
And we know that cities have been clever about, well, no, you need to have, bus traveling every 15 minutes. I clearly testified that was not. If one bus comes into town and it's at this stop and it comes in once a day and I'm within a half mile, I'm protected by 1069. So
okay. Good to know.
It's a way for. I mean, the state has responsibilities, and we enable cities to function, and sometimes we have to come in and say you can't do this and you can't limit this. That's the tug of war that we have with the local and control and state governance. What
has been the response from the different municipalities on this? Counties and cities, are they annoyed? Have you gotten any feedback from them?
Well, I mean, I've had I think some of them are happy, some of them are frustrated, some of them are upset. They fall into all three categories. Some cities, San Jose, for instance, they want to do a stronger law than SB 1069. Mayor Liccardo is Wieckowski. If you can do this, that's the floor. We're going to do better in San Jose. Los Angeles, I think, while they haven't approved their new ordinance, they're operating under 1069. They're aggressively, ministerially granting permits for people that want ADU. There's a different temperature and a different atmosphere in Los Angeles. Other cities, I mean, we have 482 cities, and about 200 have passed ordinances that are either allegedly, some of them are in compliance with 1069, some of them aren't. One of the new elements that the bill does, SB 13, is that it gives the Housing Community Development the authority to go over these bills and say, this is not in compliance. And in some cities are taking it slow, and they're working within the confines of 1069, and others are just, we'll put them in the bad actors. They can say that they're upset, but 1069 is pretty clear. and I did it on purpose. I said, if your local ordinance does not comply with 1069, it is completely void. It's not voidable. It's not Section 16 is out. The whole law, the whole local law is done, and then you are bound by 1069 until you pass a new ordinance that's in compliance with state law. So you got almost 300 cities that haven't done that, and we're going on 3 years now.
Greg Nicholas with the Housing and Community Development Department for the state is going to be part of the panel on June 11th in San Diego. And I've been talking to him since probably August of last year. And I went to the state website. I'm like, I don't see all the ordinances for all these cities. He's like, yeah, you're right. And it defaults to the state. And so I've heard different contractors tell me that, they show up with the plans to the local city with no ordinances, and they basically just have to stamp it because they don't have anything up against it. So it's interesting. You're right. There's a lot of cities that just don't. But what's helpful with what you're doing, though, is it standardizes it. So as a real estate investor, a lot of us have properties in a lot of different municipalities, and it is an absolute nightmare to know that it's the most updated ordinances aren't necessarily on the state. It may not even be on the city's website. You almost have to call your local council member and say, hey, politically, where do we stand with this? Are you guys going to be passing anything anytime soon? And especially if you're not a resident of that city, it makes it really onerous and sometimes dangerous because investors are putting up their own money. And these are real estate investors with the talent, the access to the laborers that know how to build, they know the process, they have access to private capital like the Norris Group who can help them fund it. So, I can see this investors helping fill this gap faster if it's more clear. So Senate Bill 13 is pretty exciting. I did ask Greg. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say you'd like to see the cities get into the pre-approved process. There's, some cities have done that, but you'd like to have that conversation that this is what we will approve this. This is what we like, for design guidelines and things like that. And there's Encinitas has some pictures and some pre-approved plans that this is what they would like to be done. I know LA's playing around with them. I don't know what's on their website. Santa Cruz has had some things for a long time, and you'd like to see whatever. If it's the mission look that you'd like, okay, so be it. If it's the country inn look that you like, let the builders know. And the homeowners, remember, some of these are this is a one and done for a lot of individual homeowners. I know we're talking to investors, but I expect a lot of help coming from. They can be builders, but this is I'm just got one unit in my backyard.
Well, Senate Bill 1069 was very flexible. So in the show notes, I will link to the conversation you and I had in November because I have so much I want to cover today. And then we've got people that are going to have questions. But manufactured housing is included in this. It's really broad. So in my mind, it was a mistake for cities not to come out with an ordinance because it was very generous. So, oops.
Yeah, right. And that's the. Those are the consequences. I was really clear when people said, well, wouldn't you just want to make it voidable? And I said, no, it's void. We're done. We're done being around. And what it does, at least on the commercial side, it spurred all these, prefabbed units and I would call it something that looks a little bit edgier than a cottage, but it's what people, different cities, different age groups, people, what they want to live in. It's a smaller unit that we're talking about, sometimes 500-600 feet. So
yeah, well,
it can be.
The state recently sued the city of Huntington Beach for not meeting affordable housing goals. And correct me if I'm wrong, when they're not in compliance and if they don't comply, I don't know what the process is in them coming into compliance, because catching up on affordable housing seems like it would be a slow process. Their CDBG funds are at risk. Is that true?
Correct. It is that, and remember what Huntington Beach did is that there were two things that they did. They're a charter city, and I ran a bill because I found out about Huntington Beach and some others. There's a couple, dozen cities that they're charter cities, and they passed a general plan that says we're going to allow this, the housing here, and this is allowed, and we identified these spots, and and then that gets approved. They get their allocation of what their RENA numbers are supposed to be to build, and then they go back in as a charter city and do a specific plan and wipe all that stuff out. And they were cute about saying, well, we're a charter city, we can do this. And that's what being a charter city does. And I'm not their city attorney and I'm not their city manager, I'm not their city council that they just think they can do it. So we passed the legislature, and Governor signed last year a bill that said that you cannot do that, that you have to, your specific plan and general plan have to be compatible. And what was happening with, and so then that was one of the elements of the complaint with the Attorney General that they had, and also they were running out of time. There was the reason that they got sued, not to pick on Huntington Beach, but there was their time period was running out where the state had to move. So it focuses some attention on bad practices, in the name of local control. They're just, it's a what's that called? They're switching out their numbers so that they can have it both ways, and we're in a different era right now. Play fairly, I guess. Okay,
so there was a little bit of politics behind the scene, because that's good to know. And I was just curious because I know that the affordability goals is looked at depending on the city every 3, 5, or 8 years, and as they come up, I wasn't sure if we should expect to see more of those lawsuits. And the CDBG funds, that's no joke. I mean, I've been serving on nonprofit boards for over a decade, and I see that it's a major funding piece for a lot of what the nonprofits do. So if the cities don't have access to that, that's a big deal.
Oh yeah, right. And it's and again, a lot of people will talk about the loss of redevelopment and affordable housing fund. The number that gets floated around is $1 billion, and I remind my colleagues, seems like on a daily basis, that our cap and trade program, which has got $3 billion in revenue, provides 20% of that, which is $600 million for affordable housing per year. And in Atkins bill, SB2, which is the $75 transaction fee that you pay on real property transactions, except for sales. Thank you, real estate world, for not allowing that to go in. But that's still $250 million. So we're at $850 million that has been replenished for affordable housing fund that people don't talk about. And did I mention that now, since cities are not paying into real the RDA, that they have that money. They have the money that they would normally been paying in, because they had to chip in the money too. So it's more or less a wash of where we were 9 years ago with redevelopment. I know a lot of people don't look at it that way because it's not a good talking point for them. But we'll continue to do, more. I mean, it's a bigger problem. Everybody agrees on the 3.5 million homes that we're short. So what we can do in the meantime to meet those goals, and ADUs, as your audience knows, is a way to get there. So I gotta make sure I get the law in place, at least streamline it some, so that we're nudging cities into being a partner with this. And going back to the RENA numbers, Aaron, one of the things that the SB 13 does is it has an amnesty program, but allows the cities to count towards their RENA goals those unpermitted units that exist in their cities. And again, the working numbers statewide is 500,000 of them. And it gives them 10 years to bring them up to code. So you get to count them towards your RENA numbers. You get to fiddle with, whether the door meets the code or whatever needs to be done. I mean, as long as it's safe and safe and not a hazard, my preference is that the cities approve these things, and they permit them, and they get going, and then if the homeowner wants to improve it, let them improve it.
And they have 10 years to do it. Okay. Well, you know what? Let's dig in then, because that's what I was going to do. Is I was going to go through the changes quickly of SB 13 and sort of how, if there's any backstory of why some of the changes were coming up, because some of them are pretty juicy. So a lot of the people that I've spoken to do not understand that ADUs are possible on multifamily. So that's 1 to 4, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if you have a fourplex, you are able to add an AD unit for technically a fifth. Got it.
Correct.
Okay.
And some of these small, fourplexes they look like little apartment complexes, and a lot of times in some areas there's the garage in the basement. That if they can do something outside, but they also could do something within the structure. Get rid of everybody's storage and put an ADU back there. Again, it depends on what the physical structure looks like.
Okay. Now, I believe in 1069, there's language too that it carries over into sort of, is it like agricultural sites, to where a lot of times there may be one structure on ag, and then you can add an ADU. Does that still apply?
I'm silent on it with SB 13.
Okay.
Right.
Got it.
I'm not extending it because, again, I've got some people in the rural communities are, they say that they're unique and the ADU shouldn't apply. And again, I'll go back to my tract home built in 1959 is in the suburbs of Fremont. There could be another tract home in the inner city of Los Angeles. It's the exact same model. And another tract home in Winters, California, which is quote unquote 4,000 people, but it's the same house, right? On the same 5,000 square foot lot, right? So, and if there's a bus stop within a half a mile, 1069 applies. So,
Okay.
I'm not trying to pick fights, but again, I'm trying to clean up what I think are the biggest barriers to do it. And then, this is, I think, as you can see from the 9 other bills, there's some enthusiasm to as we learn of the clever things that cities do to create new barriers, do the adjustments.
Agreed. So, and that's part of why I want to go through this list, is because I'm like, why was this phrased a certain way compared to 1069? So a change on the parking would prohibit cities from requiring replacement parking if an ADU was placed within an existing garage structure. Is that because of a driveway or street parking is typically there? Why was that specifically spelled out?
Because so remember, 1069 did 2 things. It said that you can slice and dice your house any way you wanted to, including the conversion of your garage, and it was a ministerial activity. It didn't matter where you were, if you were within a half mile of transit and something like that. If you were going to build a standalone ADU unit, and then you had to be within a half. The city could allow it. Obviously, cities can be more liberal. This is the floor, right? But the city could not require you to replace the garage that you had or build another garage, because some cities were saying people were putting in they had a detached garage. I have a attached garage, so I wanted to be clear that if you're just going in on the garage and just doing a conversion, that counts towards the existing structures. You're not building anything new.
Okay.
And you didn't have to have parking. There's no parking required for any of the ADUs. The cities are clever. They're coming up with these ordinances to say, well, if it's detached, then you had to replace it, and that was never the intention of 1069.
Okay. Well, it was.
It's sort of. I mean, Aaron, remember I had to do cleanup legislation in 2017, SB 229, which a lot of people will say, "Oh, there's too many bills coming on." I mean, in 229. And I think I said this the last time I was on your show, I had to define what tandem parking was. I mean, come on, really? I mean, there were some cities that say, well, you didn't define what tandem parking was. And then, my favorite was the special districts, the water districts that negotiated this, proportional fee in 1069. And then as soon as the governor signed it, they said, we're not, Section 1 doesn't specifically mention special districts, so we think that we're not bound by this. So here's a whole interest group that negotiated terms on 1069 that weakened the bill in my mind, and then they said that we don't apply to this. So that's cleanup legislation that I think in this area of ADUs we have to, we're going to hear from your investors, we're going to hear from different nightmare stories, and Greg Nichols is going to tell us from the Housing Community Development that this is unbelievable. How somebody found this is the exception to how they got to know. So that's part of that little clarification on the parking.
The Norris Group originates and services loans in California and Florida under California DRE License 012-19911, Florida Mortgage Lender License 1577, and NMLS License 1623669. For more information on hard money lending, go to thenorrisgroup.com and click the Hard Money tab.
For more information on hard money loans and upcoming events with the Norris Group, check out thenorrisgroup.com. For information on passive investing with trust deeds, visit tngtrustdeeds.com.